Hi,
Hi there.
how are you?
Good.
Great.
So I'm Renee Kenny from Refugee and Immigrant Connection Spokane, and I'm sitting here with Emily Irwin. Emily, do you want to explain a little bit about what we're doing here today?
Yes, I would love to. Yeah, I'm Emily Irwin. I'm the Wellness Director at Refugee and Immigrant Connection Spokane. And welcome to Community Cup, Rick's podcast on wellness and connection and what that means to people from different cultures and different backgrounds.
So, Emily, tell us about the name of this podcast.
Yeah, I would love to. It's funny, actually. The name came from a mistake. It was a reference to a song that I really like by a group called Tank and the Bangas. And I thought that they had a song called Community Cup that I really enjoyed. Turns out it's called Communion in My Cup, but
Same,
I
same.
think I think Community Cup still works best for us because it's referring to the kind of common idiom of filling up our cup, our spiritual cup, our emotional cup with things that make us well, that make us feel good, that make us thrive, so that we can give out all that love to the world and to the people that we love. And something that is key to wellness for most people around the world, from different cultures, different backgrounds, different identities, is community, is a sense of connection to place, to people, to food, to music, to yourself, and to each other. And so Community Cup came out of that. So we're filling up our cup, our collective and individual cups with community.
Great. So, Emily, this first episode that we recorded deals with connection, and I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit of background from the social emotional background from mental health professionals. What do we need to know about connection?
I think the reason we chose to do a podcast on connection is because connection is the root of everything we do at Rick's. It's our guiding principle. It's our goal is to help every individual feel more connected to Spokane as their new home, possibly to the natural world and to each other. So building community and connecting with each other is what we aim to do in all of our projects and activities. In the wellness program at Rick's, we aim to support people's mental health, support people's social, emotional health. But we know that culture is a part of a well-being that cannot be ignored, that cannot be separated from healing. And we know that we aren't going to be able to serve every single culture in the way that it deserves to be. And so we focus on what we believe are some universal elements to wellness. And that includes a sense of connection and a deep sense of belonging. And so what we know is that people, as humans, we're social learners. We learn from each other. We feel better when we feel connected. And there isn't one single definition of connection. The idea of connection, what it feels like in our bodies and our minds, is highly informed by our culture, by our family, by our values. And so today we're going to be having a conversation with people from different communities, people from different countries, different cultures about what connection means to them and how they're finding it here in Spokane. For me, I spent some time in community counseling and specifically in working with people that are in recovery from substance use disorder and other addictions. And the first time I encountered the importance of connection is through a famous journalist named Johann Hari, who famously said that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And that really resonated with me, and that stayed with me since. And going beyond that, and outside of just the world of recovery, we know now, as research has showed us, that social connection plays a huge role in our health, in our wellness, not just our mental health, but our physical health. Low social connection is associated with physical issues, increased risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, honestly, early death. I mean, all sorts of things. And this is actually becoming more and more well known and taken more and more seriously, especially following the COVID pandemic. I think that everyone sort of intrinsically felt the impacts of not being connected, and to the point now where governments are paying attention. In my research for this podcast, I thought it was really interesting. I found that many countries have established kind of like departments that are studying isolation and loneliness and social connection and how to improve connection in their countries. The UK and Japan have actually appointed what they call ministers, of loneliness. And in South Korea, they are paying youth a monthly stipend to encourage them to reintegrate into society is the language they use. But finding kids who are feeling disconnected from their friends, from their communities, and offering them a financial incentive to kind of lean back in. And even though the value of connection is becoming more understood to and how it affects our mental and physical health, there is no global definition of connection. Like it means something different to every individual. We know how important social connection and a sense of belonging is to our wellness and our well-being. We know that people who go through migration often do find really beautiful new connections with new people and build new relationships and build homes in new places with new landscapes and new languages often. But we also know that the experience of migration can be deeply isolating. History in a new culture, maybe a new language, separated from many friends and families and familiar places and homes and food. And we also know that the need for connection is a universal need. The process of remaking these connections looks different for everybody. Today we're going to be talking to 3 members of the RICS world who have lived and who are living this experience. We're going to be talking to Rumiana Kudeva, Luis Castillo, and Margot Mejia. And we're going to be listening to Rumiana, Luis, and Margot talk to each other about their journeys of rebuilding connections and finding new connections here in Spokane. Welcome to Community Cup, where we chat about what mental health means to us.
Paying attention there, at least.
Yeah. Well, here is more like after the fact, like we're very good at different interventions to deal with the outcomes, but not really to do prevention because you don't see the immediate, result from prevention. Yeah. And I really think it's cool that they have the Minister of Loneliness, but I would like to see a Minister of Social Connection, the opposite, because often we focus on the negative.
Yeah.
And we don't think of like how it would feel, to actually have what we want to achieve.
Let's get started.
So my name is Rumiana Kudeva. I'm a Bulgarian immigrant, naturalized citizen. Lived in the country since 2005, and I had like a short stint, I would call it, in Australia for 2 years. And I am on the board of Refugee and Immigrant Connections Spokane since maybe 2021, I think. It was in the middle of COVID when I joined. I think that's all.
Well, I'm Luis Castillo. I am originally from Venezuela. I came here about 2.5 years ago, and I have been working at RICS since July 2023. I think so. Mm-hmm. So it's almost 2 years at RICS. First as the Welcome to Spokane program coordinator, which is a really cool experience. And now being more involved with all programs and operations.
My name is Margot Mejia. My family migrated from Mexico, and we lived I grew up mostly in the central Washington area where we have a lot of immigrant populations. I've been in the Spokane area for about going on 4 years now, and I've been with RICS for about 3 years. I started there as a student intern, and I am currently the early childhood engagement specialist.
Great. And I'm Renee Kenny. I take care of the marketing and development for RICS, and I'll just be kicking us off today. So the big question that we're trying to answer and talk about is connection. So a question to get us started. What does connection mean to you, and how does it affect your mental health?
Connection is super broad. So I guess it can mean different things depending on how we think about it, because if we think social connection, then you think more around how do you connect with people. But then you can be connected to place, you can be connected to nature, your culture, many different things. So I guess maybe starting to talk about connection as social connection today, but I do like to think about it as, being connected to the world where you live and the place where you live, and then the culture within that place that might be differing from your own culture. How does it affect my health personally or in general? Personally, I would say I do feel it. I'm very introverted in general, but I do feel when I start getting isolated and when connection lacks. So, just being a little bit more sluggish or just not feeling like going out, and that's pretty much my sign that I need to do the opposite, like to push myself and go and reach out to friends or just spend some time in nature and gardening or, walk my dog, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, for me, in a more general sense, connections in general is a very key piece of a functioning system. So you need many pieces linked together, working together to have something bigger functioning. So social connections are pretty much the bonds that humans build with each other, with nature, as you said, Romiana, with the place we're living, with our surrounding, and those links are what make a ideally functioning society, and it is absolutely linked to our mental health. The more isolated you are, the more likely it'll be that it is an outcome or a symptom of depression, anxiety levels that you don't know or have not been able to control, frustration with society, with so many things around you, and as a response you just decide to go and retreat from whatever you have been involved. And yet again, connecting with people, connecting with others, with your community, with your neighborhood, helps you keep a healthier, let's say, mental health levels.
Can I just add something? Because you got me thinking when you said neighborhood. So we're in a new place. Like last year we moved there, and I love gardening. I mentioned that. So I have a huge plot that I need to plant, and I didn't want to spend that much money. So I reached out to neighbors, and everybody gave me different plants that maybe they're overgrown or they don't need. This year, and I'm not that close friends, obviously, with the whole neighborhood, right? But now they're growing and blooming, and I'm connected to these people who gave me, because I remember, oh, that lady gave me this iris. Oh, that lady gave me those daisies. And I'm thinking about them, and I feel connected to them without necessarily them being part of my life actively. So that was awesome that you said like neighborhood, because I guess it's something active we do, but even when after the fact, like that connection continues to exist.
Yeah.
Even if you're not actively engaged with those people.
Yeah.
I guess you could say it brings up that sense of belonging, which kind of brings up a good question. Is there a difference in our minds between connection and sense of belonging?
I think there is a difference. And I think the biggest difference is, like, to me, connection is something that brings things together, whether it's people, whether it's relationships, whether it's partnerships, or connection to place. And I feel like when I first moved to Spokane, the culture was so different than what I was accustomed to. So I felt like there was a lack of connection to me. And what I did, I thought as a, like, plus for my mental health, is like, I'm just going to get so busy with stuff. It's going to just, make me kind of push it to the back. But then that reasonably leads to burnout, because you're like, okay, well, I'm just doing these other things. I'll just see my family later. And then months passed by and I wouldn't go to Yakima just because, like, I was just doing so much work. And I didn't feel a sense of belonging. I felt like I started to know a lot of people at Rick's. I had a lot of school friends. I started to see, like, some of my neighbors more often, but I didn't feel like a sense of belonging. I still didn't, like, feel home. If you were to ask me, like, a year ago, would you stay in the Spokane area? I'd be like, no, I'm running as soon as I graduate. But I think it's different once you start to develop, like, these strong social connections or connections to place. You feel like you belong and you want to stay. You want to kind of further develop that connection to community, to make things that are meaningful to you. So I think there's, like, I think you can have connections without a sense of belonging, but it's really hard to have a sense of belonging without these connections.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely. And I had similar experiences like you when first we moved here. It was so different. We lived in South Jersey for like 11 years, 12 years. And when we moved here, it was kind of like a shock for me because it's still USA, right? Like I'm like, how different it's going to be. It was complete different culture, and we missed a lot, like from what we had at South Jersey, like community and friends and family. But you went into working, I went into critiquing. So I was like, oh, this is
Oh,
wrong.
no, I did that too.
This is not right. And then moved away for 2 years because I thought I'm going to have it better somewhere else, right? Grass is greener. And then when we came back, I was like, so what am I doing? To create that sense of belonging for myself and my family and for others too, because, I was hearing from other people as well, that they felt that sense of isolation. And it was in the middle of COVID and all that. And that was really my main reason why I joined RICS, because I wanted to be part of an organization that works actively in our community to create that sense of belonging for others.
Yeah, that's very important on my own experience as a newcomer. I used to live in a house that was on top of a hill, very far from civilization. I had to walk like 30 minutes to get to the bus stop, and I was craving social connections with the outdoor, with the outer world, not just the people in the house. So I was attending classes at Barton. And then I found out about Feast, and I suddenly started to go and walk all over downtown because I was trying to push myself to connect with the nature, with the land, with the different neighborhoods, and try to understand better the dynamics in Spokane. And yes, part of the initial conversation was like sense of belonging might be more of an outcome of connections. You need to be connected first to then feel that you belong somewhere.
With the sense of belonging, we just can I nerd out for a second?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Go ahead.
So with one of my previous colleagues in Australia where I taught, he's an immigrant as well, like me, and we were in more like of a transnational migrant, like moving from a country to a country and settling in different places. So we were really curious about how people think about their end of life, even if they're not facing any sickness or anything like that. But how do they think about what's going to happen with their body after they die? Like is that associated with their sense of home and belonging? So we interviewed. He's from Zimbabwe, so he interviewed Zimbabwean immigrants. I interviewed Bulgarian immigrants in Melbourne, Australia, and another, actually, after that we expanded, so in Australia, and people who had settled there for some time. So we wanted that initial stress from, resettlement to be passed, like, so for them to feel that they're settled. And incidentally, what we stumbled over was that sense of belonging, because everybody was talking about it when they were thinking about home and how they make home. And even more interestingly, they were talking about we called it fractional belonging, but that sense of belonging, but not fully. Like, so you're not fully accepted, for like what you have to bring. So it's almost like code switching, where you have to kind of censor part of yourself, so you're accepted. And they were talking about, at the workplace, this part of me is accepted there, so this is what I offer. And I feel I belong there, but just with this part, not with my full cultural self of who I am. And at first we thought of it as more of a kind of like a shortcoming, of migration, because you always lose something, of yourself. Like even people were talking about going back to their home countries and not feeling that they belong there either, because the place continued to evolve and people continue to move on after them. But then when we were, analyzing the themes and talking to people, it really, what we came to a conclusion that it's actually resilience-based and it's adaptive, because you do realize at first you maybe try to kind of force yourself or exclude yourself, from culture completely, isolate yourself. But then you realize that there are those certain areas of life or different roles you have in life where you can fit in just part of you there, right? And then you can offer something else of you somewhere else. And you can find all those different places where you can belong, even not fully, but still you find that sense of belonging there. I was absolutely fascinating because we did not expect, people to talk about that more. Like we were thinking like, oh, what's home? And, like what's going to happen to us after we die? But people really were just drawn to that aspect of migration and life in general, because I think everybody lives with those ideas of where do I belong and how do I build home where I am for myself and my family and kids.
And it takes time because building home is, even if in your own home country,
Exactly.
building a place in a community that you can say, oh, this is home for me, takes time. So in another completely different culture is way more difficult. And sometimes something that affects really much is people trying to push themselves into building home as soon as possible. And it's not like that. I mean, it'll come with your persistence. It will come with persistence of the people that is around you, but it's not gonna happen like right away. It's not something that you can just decide and say, oh, now, yeah, this is home.
And I think the best thing about building home is like finding places in community or people that kind of give you that sense of comfort and like to place. Like it's so comforting to go to a city, and you're like, oh, I know where they have the best food, or I know where they have the best coffee, or this is where me and my friends like to hang out. And I think that kind of creates a sense of belonging and ties like a connection to place as well. Even now, like I have a lot of family and friends in Yakima, and they're like, when are you going to move back? And I was like, I don't know if I want to move back. And it's not that it's like not a piece of home and a piece of me. It's not that I want to stay in Spokane forever, but I'm just like, I think there's more out there. And, as Louise said, you have to find that balance, but also like the way that you connect with others and like what it brings to you. Like, I think it's super important in what you decide to like ultimately do. And when you're like, okay, this is a place that I could be, not just for certain people or not just for one restaurant, but like when you find community. And I think when you find things that tie you down to place is really important. And you can have that, like in fragments, you can have that, when I've traveled or even like just going back to Yakima, there's a lot of things that I really love there and that I would pick over a lot of other places, but there's also a lot of things that I don't. And I think that's the best thing about if you have the privilege to like choose, like decide what you want it to look like and like what makes you feel like that you want to be a part of that and like grow within that community. And I do think like even if Spokane is not ideal because it was not for me, I live in the valley, so it's a little different. I did not even know Spokane was a resettlement city. I didn't know there was resettlement agencies. Even when I started my work with RICS, a lot of the immigrant population that they serve was drastically different to the immigrant populations I would serve in Yakima. But I do think that connection and bringing and connecting people to others and to places is a huge step to getting to know a new place and making it feel a little better than it was before. Even though if it's never going to be home or it's never going to feel like this or it's never going to fill every gap, I think just filling in small gaps builds up to that.
I like that. So obviously since I'm researching belonging, that's been a thing for me, for quite some time. But thinking about it, I still remember years ago, my younger son was still younger and liked to talk to me. So I was talking to him about how confused I am. Like, where do we belong? Because we lived in Australia at that time. So I was like, we're Bulgarian and American, but now we live in Australia. Like, where is really home? Where do we belong? And I told him, like, I kind of feel like we're homeless, that we don't have home. And he was like, no, you think about this wrong, because you felt you belong in Bulgaria, you felt you belong in America, now you feel you belong here, so you belong everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it really was like, wow, like, you're 8 and you tell me all this.
8 years old?
Yeah, he was little. Yeah, he was a little guy. But that's the thing, is like shifting that perspective. I love what Margot said, because you can find things that you can invest yourself in every place, and then every place matter to you. So it's not that we're just moving from place to place without being invested there. We do leave a piece of ourselves everywhere we live. And that is my goal, to leave it better, than I found it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that you invest in the places that you go and that you find connections. So do you think that's a way that you find connections, by investing in the place that you're at?
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, definitely. Because before, I still remember first when we moved here, and it was very a long-waited, move, and I worked towards it for such a long time, and I thought, oh, it's a dream come true. And then when I came, and just it didn't click for me. But that was because I was not investing really in the place. I was waiting for the place to just offer me everything that I dreamed about, right? And sometimes it happens, in some places, but not everywhere. So we do need to be active. So maybe in a sense, belonging is an outcome, but also it's action, like we have to be active, to nurture that and develop it.
Mm-hmm. So what do those kinds of investments look like? Like, what can people do to invest in the place where they are that then leads to a sense of connection?
I think it's very individual, but I do like to think about it as find what drives you. Like what are your talents? What are your gifts? And then go about that, like just give that, to the place. Is it going to be volunteering? And volunteering can look very different. It doesn't need to be necessarily with an organization. You can volunteer, do a local cleanup in your park, or on your street,
or with a neighbor,
or do a block party, have fun, like it can look very different depending on really where, like who you are and what your needs are.
I find it interesting that you're like, volunteering doesn't have to be within an organization or like in a formalized way. For the first 6 months, I didn't really talk to anybody besides one neighbor, and she was so sweet. She was my downstairs neighbor. She had some mobility issues. So every time I would see her trash out, I would just the first time I told her, I was like, hey, do you want me to take it? I'm going to take some trash out, or I could go that way. And she's like, oh, you're so sweet. So every time she would put it out there, I would just start taking it. And that was my strongest connection to my neighbors. It was just out of I was like, well, I can do it. Why not? And then she was just very sweet. She moved shortly after, but that's probably still my strongest connection to my neighbors. Now I say hi to some neighbors, but just out of that small act, and she was super nice to me every time she would see me. So just out of that small act, I feel like it was, there was a sense of connection. And I was like, oh, this place isn't so bad, I got Maggie downstairs.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that she felt as connected to you as you did to her? Does it have to be reciprocal?
I don't know. I could see that she would be happy to talk to a neighbor, but I think sometimes it doesn't have to be reciprocated to be meaningful. I think sometimes a connection can be really impactful to somebody. Let's say to somebody who might not know anybody in a community, and their connection to somebody is super strong, and it's really what's okay, this isn't a bad place. But the other person could be like, yeah, I know them, and they're nice, but it's not as equally strong, because they have let's say a support system in the community, or they have a lot of family in the area. But I do think they're both impactful, and I think that they are both important in their own single way, because every connection is going to be unique. I do think that even when providing services, I think connection, you can see that there's a sense of forced connection when it's not going well and you're trying to provide services, and there might be distrust, and you're rightfully so. But I think connection, it's really what you make out of it. So you can be yeah, I know that it's weird. Do you have any questions? I try to be transparent in the work that I do to kind of build on that connection and trust. Because if somebody doesn't trust you, the connection is not going to be genuine. Mm-hmm. Your relationship is not going to develop. So I think it plays, it doesn't have to be reciprocal, but it does. I think it's meaningful at both ends, and it just might look differently to both individuals. And the impact is different.
I think there's an idea, and this is what Rumiana was sharing, that you have to bring your full self to a connection. I think there's this pressure to do it perfectly. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of connects to the idea of, can we connect with people who are not similar to us?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to connect that's not every piece of ourselves connecting? Just parts?
Just parts, yeah.
I would say so. With friends, you might have friends that are very different than you in so many ways, but you happen to click on soccer, and you both love soccer, and then your whole connection will be around soccer, even though you don't match other views, you don't match thoughts on political stuff, on food, on relationships, or whatever. So it is possible to click on something without having to be a general, agreeable friendship. So it can be both ways, and sometimes it could happen that you connect so well with someone in a general sense, but then when you go to the very specifics, you are not really a good match. And then you say, okay, I like to be with this person. We have a really nice time when we hang out, but maybe when we want to go try to eat something together, that's not going to work. So maybe we can just sit around and have a chat and drink a coffee or something that we could share. So it is possible to have connections when someone is not fully on the same page than you. If you and that also is very individualized. It'll depend on what does a meaningful connection mean to you. For some people, it's very important to share about their whole philosophies and their whole cosmovision and their point of view on everything. And that's, for some people, a meaningful connection. For others, it can just be being a really, really good soccer mate or gym bra or something like that.
So there are layers of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from like just how you presented it, where like, you know, you want to be, some people might try to be like the perfect first impression or first thing. From a sociological perspective, I find it really interesting because I think you can't, you know, I think of power dynamics, especially coming into the conversation. Depending, is that a professional connection? Are you providing a service where there's obviously a power difference? Are you just meeting randomly in the street where you might be more casual and more like, okay, so if we don't hit it off, that was just a stranger. So I think when it comes to connections, most of the time it has, you know, this power dynamic that sets the tone for the interaction, maybe. There's friends and also values. I think if this is not like looking at it from a professional or even within like professional scopes, like you well, I mean, me personally, not, I guess, most people, I think like you want to have a good relationship, a professional relationship to your work that shares your similar values. Or if it's more in your personal life, I think you look at values more. And they're all driving forces into like how you how you set the tone and how you continue to form these connections.
I think, and I don't know, like, so now I'm just speculating, but I think access to social media kind of corrupted us to think that, oh, everything has to be perfect, because there you can put yourself in different groups by interest, right? And everybody, like in this little bubble, you're like all sharing the same maybe interests or even views and values and stuff. And in real life, it's never like that, you know? It's always like just part of this connects us over a game or part of this over a hobby or whatever it is, right? But it's very rare. Even in your lifelong partner, you don't have all your needs met at that person, right? Like you don't connect on everything there with them, and that's kind of like a curse that we've gotten to that idea that, oh, you have to meet all my needs, and we always have to feel, you know, connected as partners.
And I think, like, going back to just the technological advances that have been happening and people meeting online, there was, I forgot which author it was, but they were making this assumption that was pretty fair to say that when you have in the real world connection, so person to person connections, you work for that connection if you want it to work. You work for it if it's meaningful to you, and you continue to adapt it depending on how your connection progresses. But online, so the author said, like, not in the real world, you can block them. You can be best friends for somebody and all they do is like your pictures.
Yeah.
You can easily disconnect from things you don't like. There's a whole algorithm that just like, we're going to tune it to what you want to see. Do you want to see more of this, less of that? So I think there's also a difference in connection. And while I'm not trying to undermine meaningful connections that some people have met online, but I think that goes to the same principles that are applied to your real connections, is that you're going back to the investment, you're investing in this connection. You want to know more about them. It's not just, oh yeah, we both follow the same groups and we both super fans of this and we both give a lot of likes to each other. So I think there is a separation between connections that you continue to form and that are meaningful and connections that are very short-lived, even if it's supporting a very important cause. Now you see there's a lot of like social justice movements on social media, but as soon as that passes over, you typically don't connect with the same people unless it was like a very meaningful connection.
Yeah. And in real life, you're kind of also forced almost to feel uncomfortable too at certain point, right? Because you might be super like, close with somebody and connected at some level, like on different things, and then something comes in your face that you're like, really, you said this, or but there's no block, right? So you have to, I love what you said, like you have to work for it, like it's hard work. It's not just like naturally happening, and of course you're gonna click with some people because you have like that experiences and interests, but if it's a long relationship, you have to really work hard, to maintain that.
Or even a forced relationship where you're like, I have to work with this person. I should probably try to mitigate this. And see, not you guys in here or in my organization.
Or married to somebody for like 20 years. Not my husband at all. But I read actually something, and it was beautifully written. It was some poem but it was really about that if you are in a lifelong relationship with somebody, and they were talking about partnership, of course, like in that case, marriage, but it's like, you have to attend numerous funerals to that person because of who they've become, because of who you've become, right? And kind of be able to say goodbye to also some ideas, that you held for that relationship and connection you're going to have. So life is messy and rarely goes as planned, as we were hoping. So we have to be open to feel those losses and griefs and heartaches and be able to embrace what is instead of what we were envisioning and imagining that it's going to be.
So going back to something you mentioned, Ramiana, you mentioned that when you are disconnected, you notice you feel sluggish. So I wonder if we could kind of flip that on its head. What do you feel when you do feel connected? What do you feel in your body or your thoughts, your emotions? What are some signals for you all when you are feeling connected?
Oh my gosh. Like I get so like
obsessed.
Oh yeah. I get super like, so my neighbor, similar to what Margot says, she's an older woman, lives alone. Her yard is like a botanical garden. Like I'm just so envious for, like everything she got. But she lived there all her life. So with her, how we connect, and I'll give you an example, and I'll just try to describe it in detail because it was almost like this meditative state for me. It was so just an amazing experience. But it was later at night, so I'm gardening. It was like kind of dusk, I am gardening, watering in the backyard. So we have like a chain link fence between us. So she's gardening on her side. We're digging our little gardens. She yells something, calls me, oh, do you want this little plant? I'm transplanting it. I'm like, oh, sure, I'll plant it in, here in the slope. I tell her, oh, like somebody gave me from the group this, few plants. Do you want one? So we're exchanging plants over the fence, and we're just casually continuing to garden, and you hear the crickets, and you just, and it's like, the night is coming. It was just this amazing out of this life, almost like life stopped, right? Like everything was just, and that's that feeling when it just clicks. And obviously, like, we're neighbors, but I don't know that much about her life, or she knows about mine. But it was that moment where we fully were present for each other, and we just, connected. It was amazing. And I'm like, this is it. This is life. This is what you live for. Of those moments where you're fully seen, you're fully present, and you meet somebody's need, even if it's not like this huge need, and they meet your need, to be seen and taken care of in this small way. It was really, I still remember that moment. And it was so little.
So you feel timeless somehow.
So like that flow state.
Yeah.
Everything's quiet and peaceful. Nice.
And that doesn't happen for me very often. Like this brain is super active. It's hard to quiet it down.
Well, I think it was also, passion you both have for your plans. What made the click there. So everything was heavenly aligned.
Yep.
And I think one usually doesn't, you're just like, I don't know people, but you don't tie it into mental health. When, in reality, if you're not, when I was unconnected, I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to go home. I'm going to just go to sleep. I'm going to go to put a movie or do this. And while it's time to have like time for yourself, when I started like meeting people and liking places and wanting to do things, it's like I'm excited to go home and be like, yeah, I'm going to see you right after. So like the excitement you have towards doing things or the interest that you generate, even if you don't like doing something, you're like, yeah, but my friend wants to go, so we're just going to make the best out of it, I think you can definitely alter your perspective on things. When I first got here, I was very much like Ramiana. I was like, they don't have good food, they don't have this, it's so far from here. But I think once you find things to make it like worthwhile, you're like, I do have to drive 40 minutes, but you know what? The food is really good there. Or, I have friends that cook at fees, so it's a little far from my house, but it's definitely worth the drive. I did work all day, but I do want to go see my friend, and it's going to be worth staying up past my bedtime. So I think your perspective changes, and because you know that it's going to be rewarding, whether instantly or short-lived or timeless, as Ramiana explained it. I think you're like, you see more meaning behind the connections. And when you're disconnected, you're just kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter. And even though it doesn't look like you don't, like I personally don't like, oh, how is this affecting my mental health if I just sit here and I don't talk to anybody and I don't go out? And, I try to block things out with sleep or work or whatever. Like it does have an impact. And just like when you're excited to go visit friends or family or, your dog at home, I think it makes all the difference. Like now in the beginning I didn't have my dog, and now when I get home it's completely different than when I would get home without her, or if I'm feeling like tired and I was like, no, we still have to go on a walk. She's been home all day. And my mood changes even for, I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. I probably could use the fresh air. But I think it's like that. I think the term mental health is so tied down to like something is wrong with me, and most people don't want to like look at it that way, I think. But I feel like there's a more broader definition to mental health, and it can be very individualistic, and it could look very differently, whether it's like good or bad, depending on your experiences.
What you said with tired, like that's another sign that I've really hit it off. Like I feel tired after that. Because you get this rush and, almost like high, like, oh, like we're chatting and talking and laughing and it's awesome. And then once it's over, I'm like, you're tired, but it's a good tired. It's not like, oh my God, this,
I did
how
it.
can I sit through the whole meeting again? No, it was like, oh, that was awesome. And you just crash because you're like all this like oxytocin and everything, like it did its thing, it filled you with those feeling good hormones, and now you're just resting. So I do feel kind of tired after, good meeting or good relationships and spending time with friends. What about you, Louis?
Well, I definitely understand your part of feeling tired, and it's not a tired. It's kind of a. It's not a fatigued tiredness. It's a. I enjoyed it, like when you go to the beach and you loved it, and you spend the whole day sunbathing, and you feel pretty tired, but you loved it. I think when I wake up and I think about that the first thing in the morning, and I'm really happy to work on it. That's a sign that I'm really connected to that or to someone or to something. So this could be little rituals like preparing coffee in the morning. It's like a moment of peace you can have before going to work and prepare your mind. So I have that little espresso machine, and I like to just spend some time there, use the steamer to heat the milk, and it's like a ritual. Same thing like at night, I got a gift from, I think it was from Catherine, a little succulent, little plant that I like to water every night a little bit. So those are some signs of little things that you could enjoy in your daily life. And if you connected that with some other bigger things, connected with people, I have a couple of friends that I really enjoy spending time with them. And it doesn't have to be doing something specific, just spending time together, watching TV, cooking together. I love cooking. When we are together and we are cooking and eating and sharing, that's a very special, without having it to be special for broader standards, it's a very special thing.
When you talk about like these intimate, interactions with your friends, we often don't think how even just like cooking together or going out for a night, how that does have a pretty big impact on your mental health in the ways that, we're having a lot of fun, but then you're kind of unwinding and you're like, you know what, I was having a really bad day, but this has definitely made it better. And then they're like, oh, what happened? So it kind of, sometimes you're given the opportunity to talk to somebody. And I think just talking to somebody can be so powerful sometimes, just somebody saying like, hey, but, it was a rough day, but tomorrow's going to be better. Or, we all kind of go through that. And I'm really glad you still decided to come out. So I think even just those, whether it's like when you're cleaning up in the kitchen after a nice meal that you've prepared, or whether it's in the Uber ride when we're coming back from the bar, whatever it might look like, I think friends and having connections, like relationships that are supportive, play a huge role in your mental health. And I feel like when you are disconnected, you don't have people who you can maybe express how your day was, what has been challenging for you. So yeah.
But it's important to recognize that we have people sometimes, and we can get to the point that we feel so disconnected from ourselves that we don't even plan on reaching out to the people we have. And that, that can turn into so many difficult things happening as a result of that disconnection. It can be, I won't say you are actively choosing to isolate. Maybe you are, some people can disengage at a point that it becomes natural to feel that they don't have anybody. So that's why it is really important to be aware of the smallest things and to be grateful for your daily small activities. For me, it's a healthy practice to wake up and say thanks for the sun, and thanks for having a good or a new day in front of me, ahead of me. And when I get home, thanks for the day, for the people I met, thanks for the things I did, because your mind needs to be, you need to be gentle with your brain, with your mind, and you need to keep nurturing that connection with your mind also, because otherwise we are just trained to be, not trained, but this society we live in kind of pushes us to be automatic.
Yeah.
And just keep going and keep going and keep going. And the more you keep going on the daily responsibilities, you forget about nurturing healthy relationships. And it's really hard.
Practicing, so there was like few things, glimmers was one that came up recently that kind of picked up, popularity. So noticing those little things, that matter. Practicing gratitude, that's a proven, practice or exercise, if you want to call it, that's often prescribed actually to counter depression and anxiety. That you have to, you're right, if you don't practice it, you're going to get sucked into this automatic, pessimistic negativity,
Yes.
Deficit-based thinking, because that's just how we're made up. So you have to practice, you have to do it, like not just think about it, but you have to actually do it. But it also reminds me of hope, and I know you're probably sick of me talking about hope, but it's exactly that. It's like not everybody is gonna have those positive experiences of like everything being like roses and butterflies. And even when your day is bad, you still can find those small glimmers, you can find those positive experiences that can be preventative. They are preventative. Like there's tons of research behind that, to talk about not just the mental health benefits, but also physical health. People who have positive experiences, even small, mundane, everyday experiences, and who notice that they have. So that's the thing, is like you have to also be knowledgeable of it. They do better in life, it's, starting from childhood, like the research was on childhood positive experiences, but then now we have new research coming up with adult positive experiences, and they're as valid and as powerful as child ones. We can prevent all trauma, but we can, all of us have a role to play to introduce those positive experiences.
And I feel, going back to what Luis said, feeling disconnected, where you're like, what, it's so much that this person is not even going to understand what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. And I think most of the time, so people might become, they might alienate themselves, friends might not come around, since invitations might be turned down often, and we often see it as an individual problem when it's really a societal problem. Because it's all these other, it's like the environment that you're in, the climate that you're in, just so many things can have an impact on your well-being. But people are usually like, well, that person is not trying to connect with people. They're not trying to reach out. They're not talking to people who are offering help. They don't want it. But it's really a societal problem. And I think that's also one of the reasons why our community outings at Rick's came to be, because we know it can be really difficult for a person to openly say, like, yeah, I'm struggling right now and I really don't want to do things. But when you do it as a group, you're kind of like, well, there's not going to be that much, like, I could just kind of wander in the back. But it can bring people together. It can give people an opportunity to come together in a smaller step, and not so like intense way where, there's days that I am very open to like, yeah, I just want to meet, I'm going to meet people and I'm going to connect. And there's other days that I show up in like mixers and I'm like, I'm just going to stand in the corner. I've had enough of people contact for the day. But yeah, it's definitely more of a community and societal issue when there are individuals feeling disconnected. And I think the best way to bridge that is through connection.
Yeah. If you build it, they'll come, right? And it's true. Like there's so much now as a country, we're going back to some very traditional knowledge about, you do need the village square. You need people to be able to walk, to places. You need people to be able to just naturally come across each other. Because maybe you will feel like kind of peopled out and you don't want to necessarily, strike conversations with everybody. But it's enough that you're actually seen, acknowledged, people not. I still remember when I was little, we would go in the summers to my grandparents' village. You could not go to there was just one bakery, so you have to walk there to get bread. You could not walk there before, maybe, 5 or 6 people stop you and ask you, Who are you? What is your name? And who are your grandparents? Oh, I know them. Who's your mom? And that, like, so you answer, and we were so annoyed as little kids. But now thinking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like as a little kid, I mattered. Like even to these people who just saw me for like 2 months in the summers, right? I didn't live with them. And it's really that, because you are forced, that's the infrastructure. First I have to walk, to the bakery, walk back. And then people, they would sit in front of their houses. So they had those little benches, right?
The security cameras from town.
And you cannot escape because you'll be noticed. And you better say, good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah. They will tell you
answer.
that
Yes.
if you don't do it, they will say like, hey, good morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have.
Absolutely.
That also happened in my hometown.
Mm-hmm. And we can do it here. That's the thing. It's like, it's not that we can't. Like, I know American cities are built for cars, and then pedestrians are afterthought. But we build it, so we can rebuild it. We can change it. And there's tons of science behind it that we need that as species.
Mm-hmm. A couple of years ago, an organization put together a free donut situation at the park near my house, and I only went for the donuts, which I think they knew people would do that. And then there was no structure, so people were sort of standing around with their pets awkwardly. Mm-hmm. But they were trying to bring people together in like a authentic and old-fashioned way. And I actually met someone and their tiny dog, and I go by their house a couple times a week on a walk, and I know them from that event, even though it was extremely awkward.
It doesn't. That's the thing. I think we often kind of romanticize connection. It doesn't need to feel all the time like just right and perfect. No, sometimes it's awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And,
but there are donuts.
It's part of it. Yeah, but there's also donuts or good food, as Louis said. Like there's so much connection that happen over food and just sharing stories and being messy and
I think connections can also come out of convenience or need sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to stores where there's like zero staff or wherever we're at that speak Spanish, and I see a person struggling, and I was like, oh, and I go in Spanish, I'm like, oh, do you need help? Like, do you need me to interpret, or can I help in any way? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes. And you just see an instant connection based on the need, and just like how some people have been like, oh, thank you so much. Like, I was just having such a hard time trying to translate and, this and that. And it's people that sometimes I would like later bump into the store again, and they're just like, oh, hey, and I'm like, hi. So any little thing I think can bring connection, even awkward situations. Because then I'd be like, should I walk up to that person, or am I being weird? But then I was like, no, I would probably want help, Or like with a lot of interactions out in community where I'm like, should I step in? I think of it like if my mom was in a place struggling with language, would I want somebody to offer help or, assistance or whatever, might be needed at the moment? And I'm like, yeah, I probably should. And most of the time, if not all, I feel like it's always been a positive connection afterward, even if it's just very short-lived. But it's still like little meaningful, things that I think also instill like hope and community, especially during our troubling times, like seeing people that are still wanting to be friends, and even saying like, yeah, everything that's happening on right now, I can't imagine what you're doing, but we love our communities, we love our neighbors. When I see it on social media, just neighborhoods, just fighting against ICE or any type of family separation, it's really meaningful to see that, and it's really impactful and empowering to other communities and people to see that.
Yeah, I think that brings for me especially, that's where the sense of belonging comes. That it doesn't need to affect you necessarily to fight for it or to be invested or to do something about it, right? Or to offer help. It doesn't necessarily need to be affecting you, because you can just walk away, right? But you going and offering, that's where my sense of belonging comes really very powerful, because we matter, like as people. We matter to others, and they see us.
I wanted to add to your point of connection around food, also around drinks, and that's why we came with the name Community Cup for this podcast. because too many meaningful connections come around drinks. A coffee cup, in Hispanic culture, like sharing coffee together and talking about things and connecting is something that's really important. Within families, within neighbors, within workmates, students. You got beers, you got wine, whatnot, and I think it's just a channel for us to be able to have an excuse, to interact.
I love that. In Bulgarian culture, actually, we say when a visit wasn't really good, it's like they came for the coffee and stayed for the wine.
You see?
So it was a long, visit, and it was going well. And
Yeah.
So I think to wrap up, we could do a little exercise, a little rapid response, short answer. 2 options. First option, how do you make time for connection? Second option, where do you get connection in your daily life? Try to answer in as few words as possible. Just the top of your mind, top of your heart.
how do you make time for connection? I like the question actually, because you don't just wait for it to happen. Some connections happen naturally, but you schedule it, like you literally just put it on your calendar, because otherwise, you're not gonna follow through, or it's just gonna be easier not to do it. And where do I find connection is really where you look for it. So it can be anywhere, everywhere. In my backyard, guys. Come on in,
Exactly.
we can garden and
Through the fence.
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. One way you can make time for connection is always being open for it. You don't only need to schedule it. It can come right at the grocery store, someone asking for help, and that might be an opportunity for you to connect with someone. Same thing, where do you get it? It can be anywhere. I'm going short. I was in a small town called Rosalia, and I happened to come across the street with someone that I met here in Spokane, but live over there. And then my friends were amazed. Like, how come that you know someone in this town that only has 503 residents?
Time for connection for me. If somebody invites me, like, hey, do you want to come in 5 minutes, the plans are made, I'm like, I am there. Do you want to go out for I am there. So I think connections happen anytime that you are available for it. Where do you but then that's my more the fun personal life. When I have to do professional connections, I'm like, oh, I got a schedule that I have to send that email, because then I will forget, because I kind of dread sending emails of people I don't know. Regular people I don't mind. Where do you get connection in your daily life? I think from anywhere. Looking at my immediate circle, I think from my dog, my friends, my community, just anywhere that provides a positive experience, I feel like I am there. Or anywhere that I feel like it could be meaningful. So even if it's a difficult thing, a friend's going through a hard time, I think I reach out. Knowing it might not be the easiest conversation to have, I think it's still as important. It's just a little more difficult. But I think anywhere, anytime.
And social media too included. I forgot to say that, but yes, all the time. My husband always says, I spend too much time on my phone, but I am connected to a lot of folks there through my phone. So is it going to be a group, on social media, or Discord group, or whatever it is, right? And we're messaging each other, so I'm constantly having so many conversations, during the day with people all over the world, and you don't have to see them, in daily life to feel connected to them.
In Yakima, I lived with my best friend for 7 years. We lived together. We shared an apartment. So when I moved, it was a very weird feeling that there was no noise. She has a son, so there was always some sort of movement in the house. And when I moved, it was very weird. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so quiet. So I'm just gonna call her. And it's funny because years passed and we are still calling each other throughout the day, even if we miss each other or we just talk or we're just doing our makeup. Oh yeah, me too. So, and just connect. So I think it's it's whatever you make out of it. So before it was the connection that we would have in the living room, just talking about things, watching TV. But now it's over the phone while we're both just doing things in the house,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're so lucky to live nowadays, because that's so much easier to just pick up a phone and call or, type up a text message to somebody.
Or send a picture, you're like,
Yeah.
look what just happened. I dropped my whole coffee.
Yes.
I started bringing my coffee with no coffee mug underneath. So that's my morning. But even that's you're making fun of it with a friend. You're connecting with somebody instead of just kind of letting dictate. Like, I'm like, oh, didn't even put a mug. That's going to be a bad day already.
Mm-hmm.
So just send a picture and I'll just laugh about it because,
Yeah.
I think, like you said, I'm privileged enough to be able to do that and to have that sort of connection.
What about you, Renee?
Oh, I have to schedule it. I think that's very cultural. Yeah, if I don't schedule things, it doesn't happen. So, but on the flip side, if you schedule things too much, the day that comes, you may not feel like doing it.
That's true.
So, yeah, definitely scheduling it. And like you said, Ramiana, just having constant conversations in any platform, social media or email, WhatsApp, Signal,
Yeah.
all the apps.
I'm just going to call Renee, like, Renee, let's go to the park. Bring your dog. She's going to be like, I don't know.
You need to make an appointment first.
You didn't make an appointment.
Is it too hard for you to navigate that difference? Because for some cultures, that's not going to be an appointment. There's not going to be a schedule.
Or there's going to be a schedule and
It's
there's
just
going to
gonna
show
happen.
up 2 hours late.
Oh, that's the
Yes.
other thing, yeah.
Yeah, I can handle that, but yeah, just the spontaneous connection is hard to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think you also grow out of it because in Bulgaria, all the time, people just stop by at your house and, you just hang out, whatever. And we were used to that. So when we moved here, I'm like, why is everybody scheduling, 5 months ahead something? It was very annoying. But now I almost feel like anxiety when I think somebody can stop by my house without telling me they're stopping. And I always say, oh, just come by. And I'm like, ooh, like, is it clean enough? Like, are the dishes done?
Oh, I am spontaneous to, like, go out into the world. But it is very different. They're like, can I just go to your house? I'm like, no. You do have to make an appointment for that. I am with Renee 100% on that one.
That's the line.
We need to frame it.
Yes.
No appointment, no visit.
Or you come and just do the dishes for me and we can chat
Oh, yeah.
over dishes.
That works too.
How
That
about
works too.
Well, I had a friend in Venezuela, and we used to be like that. He was like, oh, I'm cleaning the house, and I was like, okay, I'm going there. I'm going to help you. And we just spend time together.
Bring Luis and his friend to your house.
Yes, I like that.
And then you can stop to my house after.
Okay.
Cleaning party.
Well, awesome. Thanks for making the time to connect today.
Thank you for offering us an opportunity to connect.
Thanks for finding
Yeah.
Yeah.
even though the podcast was a joke in the beginning, look at us now. We're
The space is wonderful.
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining the conversation. If you want to learn more about what we do at RICS, check out our website, ricspokane.org, or find us on Facebook and Instagram at ricspokane. And if you have an idea for a topic, a conversation that you'd like us to explore, send us a message.